Welcome everyone to the Finance and Performance meeting in March 2024, and welcome to everyone watching on live stream. I'd first like to ask everyone to stand, and I'll read the council prayer. Almighty God, as members of the Rangitikei District Council, we give thanks for all the good things of our district and the advantages we enjoy. We pray that you will give us wisdom and guidance as we conduct the affairs of this meeting. We pray for all the communities and the district we represent. Help us to be fair and honest in our discussions, and help us to work together in unity for the welfare of all your people. Amen.
Madam Chair, I've just noticed we've changed from using that camera,
Yeah.
this camera. I think just
That's
this-
right, Kevin, we did mention it the other day, I can switch it back.
just so that the chair can be seen. Thank you.
I really okay here. So I'd like to call for any apologies.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. And I've also received apologies from Councillor Marton and Leanne Hiroshi. I'll move that those apologies be accepted. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Carter. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Not been notified of any public forum. And in terms of conflict of interest declarations, does anyone have any conflicts they would like to declare now? If not, the normal procedure is if we're discussing matters and a conflict arises, please raise it at that time. Confirmation of order of business. Don't think there's no new items to be added, and the order is unchanged as per our order paper. Confirmation of minutes of our previous meeting. I'll call for any amendments or matters arising. So go through page 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. I have a mover and a second to confirm those minutes, if there's no amendments.
Sorry, I can't because, but I was on council business. I wasn't there.
We have a mover for that. Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Thank you, Councillor Wong. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, follow-up items from the previous meetings. Are there any items anyone would like to discuss?
Just an explanation for me, and I wasn't there to listen to the explanation before. In terms of item 1, around there were no building consents in November, why was this? And the answer is that it relates to the number of building consents completed by QV. That doesn't mean to say that we weren't handling the internal consenting process, and that month doesn't.
No, effectively, correct me if you're wrong, if I'm wrong. Effectively, QV don't want to do. It's their process in that count. It's not our building consents that come in So they didn't process any building consents during that time because they were doing the revaluation. That's correct?
And it, just to clarify, this came up during the QB report itself rather than any other report. So it was the QB part of the report.
So the situation would be if somebody has completed a house, we've signed off all the building consents, and we just have to wait to QV have added to their database. So there isn't an automatic translation from our signing it off to a rating base. I'm just interested as to who absolutely notifies and who we rely on to transfer it to the rating database. Is it us signing off the consent, or is it when QV has listed it?
So once it's, this is based on previous experience, not, so I will stand corrected, but effectively that CCC will come through and be notified to QV and sit in a pile until the valuer gets to it.
As long as it's all done by 30th of June,
Yeah.
we'll feed into the database.
I can see the potential for some anomalies in building work by this process. And what I'm really interested in is absolutely who is responsible for transferring it into our rating database. So
Can I?
Yes.
Chair, if I can suggest, this is quite a technical question. I think Johan from regulatory, what we can do is ask him to maybe present a short paper to the next meeting to clear that up.
I
Otherwise,
think
we're
that would be really helpful. It seems to have come back.
and I
We're
certainly,
gonna guess and make mistakes.
I certainly take that point, and the only reason I'm raising it is because, you know, so that I completely understand that transfer process, which has proved to be problematic.
So we'll just describe the process so that everybody has confidence in how that works.
So could we change then completed to say a further explanation coming?
We'll put down what that request is.
Okay, thank you very much.
So any other questions? Councillor Loudon.
Just on that building consent issue, just some clarification. Is it building consents that are lodged with council that get recorded? Is it building consents that are signed off at the end that get recorded in these?
Remember, this is QVs, so it's
Yeah, I know.
QVs when they're completed. That's
Completed,
my
right.
understanding, because they're then loaded on. That's
Yeah.
my understanding, is we provide them to them, they then load them up. So this was QV's presentation.
Okay, I'd like to move that the report follow-up action items from the finance performance meeting be received. Thank you, councillor Carter, seconded. All those in favour? Carried. Moving on to item number 8, my chair's report. Just put on your desk this morning. And it is a finance and performance report, not performance. My apologies. So I'd just like to open my report and thank council for the opportunity to attend Zone 3 meeting in Gisborne last week. I accept this is a huge privilege and reiterate I find the topical presentations and the chance to mix and mingle with other mayors and councillors incredibly thought-provoking and definitely gives us lots to think about and a whole variety of issues that might impact our council. Not to mention the 6.5 hours each way being chauffeured by His Worship the Mayor. Plenty of airtime to ask questions. I now must apologise. Coral, Jill and I will present our report at the next council meeting as only Coral was able to meet today's deadline with her notes. We're currently consulting on our LTP and I encourage everyone to submit by the 7th of April. Currently, our average rate increases sit at 11.5%. Local Government New Zealand surveyed 48 councils and the rate increases range from 6 to 25%, the median being 15.3%. Similar high increases are likely over the next 10 years. Councils throughout the country have taken on a huge amount of debt, and unfunded mandates from government are problematic. I've been thinking about the significant inflationary pressures on our capital projects that take sometimes several years to complete, and wondering at what stage do we increase our budgets for inflation. Infometrics are saying bridges alone are 38% more expensive than 3 years ago. Roads are 27% more expensive, and non-residential buildings have got 25% more expensive in the last 3 years. We need to recognise this in our budgets, otherwise it'll be near impossible to deliver a project under budget and on time. Any questions for my report?
Two or three issues around this, because I believe you raised some very interesting points. First of all, in terms of the average rate increase, I've said to communities it's sitting around 16.5. The reason I say that is because these figures have been updated periodically.
Sure, okay.
So
Thank you.
councils like Central Hawke's Bay have just announced, etc., but there's been a progression over time. So there's been several reports around that figure. Secondly, in terms of the inflation recording, so my understanding, for instance, is we set a budget and the budget is set through the LTP, but we put an inflationary index against that budget each year. So in theory, if something has been put in the budgets at a certain figure, it does have an inflationary index added to it per se. However, what we are not good at is translating that inflationary pressure and index that we apply across all of our sector against individual project updates.
For sure.
So,
that was my point.
yeah, and I think it's a very valid point. So what will happen is that you have an $11 million budget for Marton Water, for example, that goes into the budget's 11 million, and as a total budget, it's inflated. However, we continue to quote 11 million. And it's that distinction between the capital project position against inflation, which may not necessarily be at the inflation index that we have set for the activity, a general activity. So you can have something like a building thing that is inflated dramatically further than the inflation figure we've put into our budgets. But that's my understanding. I'd like to know from staff whether I'm around cooey.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's two types of capital budget. Where we get a future budget and we set in today's terms, we might need 20 million for something in 5 years' time. We index that up and put it in a long-term plan at an index value. Other budgets like the 19 million for this building, we are told the budget for this is 19 million. If it takes 2 years, we might put 9 in 1 year and 10 in the following year. So that wouldn't be indexed.
Yeah.
So it depends on the nature of the project we're talking about. The majority of our capex budgets are indexed. The ones that aren't, for example, is in the LTP at 18 million.
Councillor Loudon.
Oh, just in my short time here at council, the project budgets have always had a contingency built into them, and it's tracked from 10-15% up to 25%, and I think that's more realistic and reflects the pressures on building capital projects.
Yes.
Through you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things. Mayor and I have been talking about this at some length, but just talking of the contingency one first, my understanding of that is not inflation. That's contingency for things that are discovered in the project.
I understand that, but it's built in as a cost.
Correct. The second one about the, like this building is one that I had concerns about, because not only is it not inflation adjusted, but it's also a couple of years old already. And it's a couple of more years before it's actually built. And so I don't know what these are, but the 18 million, if that's what we're talking about, even by today's date, it's probably 16 million. And by the time you get to build, it's 14 million. So that's something that I do think that we need to readdress, because otherwise you're actually putting unfair expectation on the project managers to deliver, which is, I think, the point that you're making too. We just haven't had the opportunity to work those through as of yet. But I do think this is a really good example of one of those that if it was costed 2 years ago and it's going to be built in 2 years' time, it's unrealistic. You're just going to get a lower and lower size build. So that's work in progress, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, queries?
Just add to that, it doesn't become a cost until we actually have an accepted tender either. So at best, these are estimates. And until somebody actually says, well, I can build it and this is the cost, that's when the reality, the rubber hits the road. And that's the point at which council has to make a decision as to whether we can afford to do it.
Right.
And again, this is an evolving process, but I also do think that there is the opportunity to have that a building or those things quantity surveyed first. So then they'd come back to council and say, this is what we said we were going to build. This is now what the quantity surveyor is saying it's worth. Do you want to go ahead with that? Do you want to take things out? Do you want to put things in? So that you've got a better understanding. It does seem that you go pretty much from a budget or what people are expecting it to be built as to more or less the end product, which is what Mayor Andy's talking about, is that comes in as a tender and the two don't match. So I think there are some decision steps that would be useful in going through so that everybody's on the same page as to what that dollar's actually getting you.
For sure. Thank you. Constantly improving.
Recommend your report be received.
Thank you. Can I have a second for that? Thank you, Councillor Loudon. For those in favour, aye. Carried. Item number 9 is reports for information, and 9.1 is the financial snapshot, February 2024. Soames, would you like to take us through this, please?
Yes, thank you very much. The operating income and operating expense side of the report, fairly similar in nature to previous months. Not a great deal of budget variance that can't be explained. I would just point out in section 2.2, I refer to roading budgets being timing differences. We've been spending a bit of time looking into that in a bit more detail, and we found out that the emergency works element of this, the budgets that have been loaded are actually project budgets, not financial year budgets. And some of that expenditure was spent last financial year. So there will be an end of year favourable budget variance of this, not because of any efficiencies or work not being done. It's just that the expenditure was recorded in a previous year. So where I say there is caused largely by timing differences, there will be an element of that, which is an actual difference that will exist at year end.
Thank you. You wish it.
Yes, I had a question sort of related to this. So in terms of roading, in terms of, are we predicted to, from last year, first of all, last year, was there any unspent roading agreement that we had with Wakakatahi that we didn't actually use? And if so, where are we going to replace it this year?
Okay, I'll start and I might fill in some gaps. Any unspent budget last financial year would have been carried forward into this financial year. This financial year is year 3 of the 3-year programme.
Yeah.
And the roading team are quite comfortable that they'll complete this year's budgeted roading programme. So the 3-year programme, they're comfortable they will tick off, including the emergency works.
That's why I sort of bundled it up, because I don't want to be in the position of submitting to NZTA claiming that we're struggling with maintenance. And then for them to come back and say, well, you actually didn't spend all your money.
Assuming there's no bad weather, prolonged weather between here and the end of June, the roading team are quite comfortable.
Thank you.
Any other questions? On page 26, our capital program there. I wondered in my head why we don't have a percentage variation on that report.
Easy to put in for next month.
I think that would be helpful.
Variation of year-to-date variance or percentage of the full year budget that's been spent.
Year to date. Thank you. Anything else there? Okay. That I'd like to move that the report financial snapshot February 2024, just correct that date there, be received. Seconder, please. Councillor Loudon, thank you. All those in favour? Carried.
Just a further question, it's not
Beg your pardon?
quite part of our existing capital, but in terms of the work that Papakai, the building of the bridges, there's a sort of overlap between it being a community event and being funded through council in terms of the better off funding, etc. Should that be included in our capital works so we understand where they're at as part of this process? I'm just wondering if we did run into problems, you know, in what process do we have of monitoring where that is at?
We're reporting on the better off funding, project funding separately. That was what was asked last.
Yeah, that's what's
Last
happening.
meeting,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. That's a
Yeah.
good answer.
Thank you. Okay, item 9.2 is the Treasury and debt report. Mr. Tomes.
Thank you. Again, standard report, which is updated each month with year-to-date figures. No real change in the predicted 30th of June position. We'll just point out that I'm in the process of taking out another $9 million parcel of line, largely to enable us to move forward with our capital programme. So happy to take questions. So I'm still predicting that our year-end benchmarks will all be comfortably met.
Thank you.
Just one, sorry, Madam Chair, just one question from me. That 35 million translates from the bottom figure of the capital project full year budget, is that correct?
So 35 million. So what, 35 million, sorry?
So if I go to the bottom of page 26, the
Yeah.
grand total is 35 million.
Okay, yeah.
Which presumably aligns to the $35 million in there. And page 27 of the report on corporate treasury and debt.
No, so what I put in paper 9.2 isn't a project by project analysis. As I say in section 2.1, when I wrote the report, I looked at the year-to-date capital spend of 11.4, and I thought there's no way we're going to go from 11.4 to 35 in 4 months. So I just notionally said, let's assume we spend 26 mil. If we do spend 26 of the 35, then what that'll do to our debt will increase it to 45.
I think the question is, that is right, that 35 does transpose from page 26 to that page.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at. But if I look at the capital works project and say wastewater, sewage, etc., if we were to buy land, then the way that I look at that figure is 35 point something 14 million doesn't include any land purchase.
Right.
So, so you're saying that anything that we purchase in terms of land would, if we were to do that, would be above and beyond that treasury position. That's what I'm trying to get at, is understanding that relationship.
Right. So page 26 shows that as at the end of February, we'd spent 11.4, say 11.5 on capex. And there's 4 months to go before the end of the financial year.
Yeah.
Right. So the section 9, paper 9.2, it isn't a project by project forecast at year end. I've just said notionally, let's pick a figure. Let's assume 11.4 million year to date goes to 26 mil. If that happens, June debt figure will be 45.
Just through you, Madam Chair.
Oh,
If there is anything that is in a forward plan and it's brought forward, no matter what that is, that would appear in that budget. So if it's as planned a part of any of those projects going forward and is spent early, that would then be dragged back into this financial year.
You can see what I'm getting at.
100%.
You know, I'll leave it there. I'm happy to leave it there, Madam Chair. That was a discussion around how this is handled later. Thank you.
thank you.
Can I just say though, that's not inconsistent with a number of wastewater projects that for whatever reason, parts of what has been proposed in a long-term plan is brought forward for a reason of timing or opportunity. And that would be normal process.
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't disagree at all.
Yeah.
And that makes sound commercial sense. However, it does alter our balance sheet positions, etc., and we need to adjust whenever we know we have information.
No other queries? Can I have a mover and a seconder for the report, please? That the report Treasury and Debt 2023-2024 be received. Thank you, Councillor Carter, seconded Councillor Wong. For those in favour, aye. Carried. Item 9.3 is a report that's given to us every 6 months, a summary of the bad debts. Thank you.
Just happy to take questions.
So I'm looking at the file overview graph there. So we're saying debt files have doubled and half have been paid back in full than previous. Is that correct?
So
I'm looking at the file overview, the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
Hand corner. Am I interpreting that correctly? That the debt files have doubled, or, thereabouts, and half have been paid back in full than previously. Is that the correct interpretation? As we should.
One of the issues I have with the way that we position our debt and our bad debts, etc., is very, very much a timing issue. So if we have a report that comes out immediately, a week after late payments and so on, there will be a number of people that have missed paying their rates, and yes, they'll get penalties, but inevitably, there's a huge proportion of that debt that gets paid off very, very quickly. It's and from a business sense, we do quite well out of it because we charge them 10%. But the timing of the report against our rate positions is incredibly important in terms of how it's. So we'll see these big waves that come through. That's
So
what I'm
I
trying to
assume
get
this is a 6 month monthly report, so we should still be comparing, you know, similar dates of the report.
What I prefer to do, because this isn't an internally generated report, it's a report we get, we don't use it for any management purposes, the committee's asked for it, so we provide it.
Right.
I'd rather than give an off-the-cuff response, I'd go back to DMC to make sure that I don't misinterpret their graph, yeah,
Okay,
I'll clarify that.
It's almost from my interest in terms of understanding our bad debt position is if you took debt that was over 3 months of age or over at least a month of age to understand. That's,
so
to
are
me,
we
that's to me
suggesting
is-
that the information that we're getting here is not what you actually require?
Do you want to just refer, if you refer back to the Treasury report, that does include what our debtors is. So each month we track receivables through the Treasury report. So page 28 of the agenda item shows what our receivables is. And if you track that month by month, you can see that just before rates are due, that's a high figure.
Yeah, but
And in the following month, it's practically zero. Interestingly, we do receive more rates in advance than we are actually in 4 times a year. Our rates paid in advance is more than our rates arrears, which is interesting. That's because a lot of ratepayers are on payment on plans and they direct debits and they pay in advance. You can track the trend of receivables through the Treasury report. Yeah.
Okay,
Councillor
that's,
Bell.
Councillor Loudon.
I'll just agree that the cost of legal action, is there any sort of indication there?
Section 3.2 of the report. Not so much legal action, but a debt collection agency, what they charge. And just for your information, the debt collection agency, they started off just looking at our local authority shared service of councils, and they're so successful that they're going almost national. Lots and lots of councils are using them now.
Right.
60-something.
So the recommendation is that this report summary of bad debts is received. I'll move that. Who will second it, please? Councillor Wong, all those in favour? Carried. Item 9.4 is a report around the fee waivers and the quarterly update. Jones.
Again, happy to take questions.
Any questions?
Just asking if we will track those. We're going up for a sizable rate increase. It'll be interesting then to see whether there's a number of people coming to us in terms of waivers or discounts.
Sure, so how often do we get to report, sorry?
Every quarter.
Quarterly? Beg your pardon, yeah. Oh, well, yeah. We will watch that.
Perhaps through you, Madam Chair, perhaps just a summary at the end of the year as to whether they have been significant compared with previous years. So I don't know how much you actually do waiver in a year, but it's worthwhile bringing it here.
There's fee waivers and rates remissions, and there's a range of waivers and remissions we give you.
Right. Okay, so I'll move that the fee waivers and quarterly update be received. Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Carter. All those in favour? Carried. Item 9.5, which is the QV report.
Again, standard report. Happy to take questions, bearing in mind we might not be able to answer any technical questions that lie behind the figures, because it's an externally provided report.
Thank you. Nothing coming out of that?
There's just one interesting aspect for me with regard to rating and QV. So, Mr. Toombs, if I built a new home and its final sign off was after June, where we set our LTP and adopt our LP with our, so my house is completed in, say, August, September. When will I be started to be rated on that property?
Or in financial year.
So effectively, somebody, the timing of the sign off means that I could go just about a year without being charged rates on the property.
Yep.
So the reason I raised this is whether that is entirely fair. So somebody gets, I don't know if there's any other way around it, or whether you could set up some sort of suspensory account.
And my understanding
I think
is,
it's an issue.
yeah, my understanding is the rates are set on the rating database that exists on the 30th of June.
Yeah.
Any tweaks to that during the financial year, the rate payer gets a few months grace.
Well, it could be up to a year's grace.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that, Madam Chair, that there is a current way around this. I accept the position, but I think it's fair to also point out the anomaly in this transition, where you can get a substantial number of new homes that could conceivably be signed off deliberately.
1st of July.
1st of July.
So this would obviously be a nationwide problem. If we, yeah,
I just-
we all can't be feeding the same.
I would imagine so, it's just.
Yeah.
Revival.
Well, even worse, Madam Chair, that the way I understand it, so somebody builds a new home and there are actions to be completed for final sign off. And they say, I'm not going to sign them off. I'm not going to complete it. Therefore, the house doesn't get signed off. There is nothing to stop them by law living in that house other than an insurance process. So we have some houses that people are living in that we do not have no process of rating. And whether that's needs to be a basis of a remit taken to local government, because it's an issue. They don't want to insure, they can get away with just living there.
How would you like to proceed with that?
What I'd really be interested in is seeing whether I'm factually correct, and then if there is a possible remit that we could take to local government and talk to some other councils to say, is this an issue for you as well? And if it is, how can government act on it? Because I don't see any way that we can decline someone from actually living in the house that is not signed off. Unless it's a health hazard or something like that.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that issue has been around forever, to be honest, and so I'm not familiar whether there's been any recent action taken on that or not. I think we did raise that with QV themselves as well when they were here, so
I don't.
there's no reason why we can't follow that up and see whether anybody, whether there's other, I don't know whether, Dave, you're in a group that asks those questions as to whether others feel it's an issue or not, and then make sure that it's factually correct and then bring it back in. Sort of idea of a remit or something.
That's a good action. Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Carter.
It's good to note that there's 88 new properties in 8 months. In the district. The concerning one was the 25 and 29% increase in the valuations. That is reflecting on the costs of things that we're talking about at the very start.
Yeah, I think we had some workshops pre-Christmas when QV gave us their revaluations of our available properties, and yeah, it's unfortunately the 25% increase wasn't uniformly spread throughout the district, but
That 88 properties is worth 1% in rates. That's why a 12.5 drops to 11.5.
Councillor Marton.
Well, just on the building consents issue, it's good to see that a lot of building consents were signed off in March. On the national program, I think it was yesterday, there was a discussion how the new data coming out on, I think, building consents lodged has just dropped off quickly and is quite significant and concerning that there's going to be quite a lack of new properties being built. Talking locally to a local builder, then new house build inventory sort of dropped off completely, and there's just lots of small jobs being done. It's just possibly reflects of new rating units dropping off for council in the future.
However, we did, the last couple of years have got a significant number for our district in the pipeline. So I guess that's getting them through whether those projects will continue or, but I feel that is an advantage for us. Yeah. Okay. So I'll move that the QV report be received. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Carter. All those in favour? Carried. So Tim's is off the hook. And we're moving to item 9.6, public feedback and performance report for February 2024. Who would like to talk to that?
It's a joint report in both of our areas, so happy just to take any questions if there are any. And try and answer.
Any questions? I had one. I was just interested in, there was a complaint on the 4th of the 2nd. I can't actually read on this report that I'm looking at. The percentage was up high 20s, 30s. Do we know what they relate to? It was just high relative to anything else. I think on page 41. Beg your pardon, sorry. Have I interpreted that correctly?
Yeah, that's a combination one, so it's just a matter of finding out which venue it related to. I think we did have some issues detecting in March going. Sorry, it was February,
Yeah.
early February. School holidays still.
Nothing sort of significant that we need to know about. Yeah. Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
I'll just take one question too, is that on page 41, on the Saturdays and Sundays, obviously that's an after hours issue because we're not manned at that particular time.
Here we are.
Yes, we are.
At the libraries.
Oh, who's that?
Yeah.
Taihape and Te Matapihi.
So why would that be? Why?
It could be perhaps with youth, one thing.
So,
So-
just a clarification. So are the Te Matapihi and Taihape libraries open in the weekend?
Yes,
But not on Martin?
Martin's open Saturday morning only.
Oh, yes, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
The reason for the rise could be the clientele. There's more
Yeah.
people on the weekend visiting.
But that's not reflected in Marton, is it?
Because Martin's closed, so we don't have the statistics for that. But on the weekends, you do get a lot of youth in, and whether there was some noise or some other. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm just interested in that historical arrangement of of Martin not being open and the others being open. Was there a reasoning behind that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Taihape and Bulls had the information centres and they were already open 7 days when we combined the services.
Okay, understand. Thank you. Councillor Carter.
Question, during the week, the tours were closed one day or two. Reason for that?
I don't know the reason. I think I did see a communication, but off the top of my head, I can't answer. That's true.
Was there a power cut or something that might have related to?
Yeah.
Where we had to shut the doors, yeah, something like that, I remember it too.
Just like to acknowledge the very favourable feedback around the toilets, and please pass that on to your staff. It's awesome. Any other queries? I have a mover and a second for the public feedback and performance report, February 2024. Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Seconded Councillor Carter. All those in favour? Carried. And we can close our meeting. Thank you very much for everyone's attendance.